This conference will now be recorded.
चतुर्मुखसमारम्भां वाग्भटाचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। रागादिरोगान् सततानुषक्तान् अशेषकायप्रसृतान् अशेषान् औत्सुक्यमोहारदिदान् जघान यो पूर्ववैद्याय नमोऽस्तु तस्मै। Namaskaram to all. Actually, uh, the portion that we are discussing right now is quite vast. Vipagam. During our BAMS classes, maybe either in UG or PG Ayurveda, MD, the descriptions what we get in the textbooks may be very very simple, and we just go through the description and finish. But actually, they are to be studied in depth. So we have already covered, I think, three sessions or more sometimes discussing the Vipagam alone. But I think we will move a little bit fast, and at least couple of things we have gone through. That means there is one school of thought which proposes Trividha Vipagam, and another school may be led by Acharya Sushruta and followed later by Bhadanda Nagarjuna, the author of Rasavaisheshika, who propose two types of vipagas. Those who are interested to know the full details about the descriptions or the discussions that is taking place in this regard should uh, refer the 40th chapter of Sushrutam Sutrasthanam as well as Rasavaisheshika, which is quite interesting. Now, we will take a couple of things to our discussion platform. Primarily, actually, I am taking putting some gaps in between to make sure that I am not missing any important points. Yeah, one point that we have to understand is the term vipaka. Generally, vipakam is considered as a vishishta pakam, isn't it? It is a vishishta pakam. Vishishtaha pakaha vipakaha. So obviously there is a question. What is the vishishtata? Vishishtata means the speciality or particularity, isn't it? Something which is not samanyam is known as vichitram, vishishtam. So here we say that this is vishishta pakam. We have seen the different stages of pachanam, different stages of pachanam, and we called them with a name avasthapakam. This avasthapakam is happening to all dravyas. So that may be considered as a samanya pagam. Avastha pagam is samanya pagam. So something which is not samanyam is known as vishishtam. So that is how the vipagam is becoming vishishta pagam. Vipagam is vishishta pagam. Otherwise, it is known as nishtha pagam. Nishtha pagam. So nishtha means something which is fixed, firm, something which is uh, not changing, something which is the last or accomplished, the culminating point, many things, or completing point. All these things are the general meanings of nishtha. So when we call vibhagam a nishtha means that is firm, that is the ultimate, that is no more changing. So there is a question, what is pagam? I think somebody asked me in between. What is pagam? Pagam is defined as vichadiya tejas samyoga paga. Tejas samyoga. Samyoga of tejas or with tejas. Tejas is agni. Samyogam. Vichadiyam. So Vijadiyam, the Tejas Samyoga of a Vijadiya type is known as Paga. What does it mean? What is the meaning of this Vijadiya Tejas Samyoga? Vijadiya means Vyatyasta or dissimilar. That is the general meaning. Here we should understand what is that dissimilar, or dissimilar to what. Here that means bahya. There is a principle, an element, a portion of Agni in each Dravya within. And a Tejas or Agni which is dissimilar to that particular Agni within is known as Bahya or Vijadiya. And the Samyogam with that Bahya or Vijadiya Teja, that is known as Pagam. This Pagam causes Parinamam. So sometimes Pagam itself is known by the name Parinamam, or Parinamam is known by the name Pagam. That is some sort of a style. That's all. So as far as our context, that Vipagam is concerned, what is the Vijadiya Tejas as far as a Ahara Dravya is concerned? It is the Jadharagni. So the Pagam which is happening to a Dravya, Ahara Dravya, by means of its samyoga with the Jadharagni and the Parinama, the transfer, the change that is happening out of it, and the Vishishta or Nishtha Pagam that is happening out of it. That is what we call Vipagam. So, as far as a Dravya is concerned, Vipagam is a swabhava, it is stable, consistent, and that way it is unique, Vishishtam also, as far as a Dravya is concerned. And regarding that Dravya, this is the view presented by maybe Charaka and further followed by Vagbhada. This is not the approach of Sushruta or Bhadanda Nagarjuna. That is important. That is how we have Trividha Vipaga group and Dvividha Vipaga group. We will not go to the finest or finer details of or a comparative uh, understanding of these two concepts, just for the sake that okay, it is happening, that's all. This Dvividha Virya Vipagam, sorry, Dvividha Vipaga Paksham, they do not think this Vipagam as very crucial or very decisive element as far as a Dravya is concerned. Especially the later authors, they even think that it is not of very high significance. But according to the Charaka school, it is not like that. They consider it as a very consistent uh, principle. There are some important questions. Actually, I have addressed that questions. That is why I'm during another lectures, especially in Malayalam, about this chapter especially. There were many questions asked by the attendees. The one interesting question in or during the, excuse me, just 1 minute, I have to attend an urgent call, just 1 minute. Hello. പറയൂ. ഞാനൊരു ക്ലാസ്സിലാണ്, എന്നെ ഒരു 9:30 വിളിക്കൂ. ശരി, ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ, sorry. One interesting or important question was that we mentioned or we saw that okay, every dravya is going through the different avasthapagas and reaches the nishtapagam. So the question was whether every dravya will go through the stages of avasthapagam or not. That was an important question, especially annadravyas. Okay, we accept all the annadravyas go through this avasthapagas, but how about aushadha dravyas? That was one important question. We have seen that okay, the first stage of the avasthapagam is completely under the control and surveillance of kapha, and during that stage there is a relative uh, increase of kapha everywhere in the body, in the sharira. Similarly, amla and kadu with the second and third stages of avasthapaga. So one question asked was, suppose a person is consuming maybe half teaspoon of pepper powder, maricham. Obviously, that also should get digested, isn't it? So whether the pajana related to that Marija Churnam, will it have a stage in the first part of the Avasthapagam where there will be a relative increase of kapha all over the body? Is it possible? We all know that Marijam is very Tikshnam, very Ushnam, and Kabhaharam. The Kadurasa in the Marija is very powerful. So, a Dravya like Marija, will it go through a stage in the Avasthapaga creating a Madhura Rasa and a Kabhavriddhi all across the body? My conviction is that yes. My conviction is yes. But in the case of Marija, that stage in the Avasthapaga which generates that surge in kapha all over the body may be getting completed very quickly. Very quickly, in the sense, even that may not be identified with all the details. That may be the speed through which that with which that stage is completed. That is a possibility, but we cannot say that no, it is not going through it. So the conclusion could be all the dravyas will go through the all the three stages of uh, avasthapagam, but with the different types of intensity or involvement. There may be multiple influences in that regard. That is another factor. We are not going to that variables which will make the situation further complex and elaborate. But this idea is very important. In each of the stages of avasthapaga, in each of the stages of avasthapaga, the dravya is getting disintegrated. And in that procedure, each dravya will show its unique nature, its swabhava, how it is going to get dissected, how it is going to address that particular stage of avasthapaga. So that way, we may be able to identify dravyas as those which spend more time in the madhura avastha of the avasthapaga, those who spend more time in the amla avastha of the avasthapaga. Similarly, those who spend more time with the kadugavastha of the avasthapaga. In a finer sense, we may be sometimes able to classify the dravyas even according to this particular criteria. Then that nature, that means the tendency of a dravya to address the avasthapaga, that will be defining the nishthapaga of a dravya as well. The particular way in which a dravya is passing through the avasthapagas, that could uh, say something about the nishthabhaga of that dravya as well. Then, taking some lead from that idea, the marija, which is kadurasa and kaduvipaga, may be passing through the first stage of the avasthapaga with which is very swiftly, but Pippali, which is Kadurasa but Madhura Vipaga, may not be passing through that first stage that fast. I'm repeating. Marija, which is Kadurasa and Kadu Vipaga, may be passing through the first stage very fast, but that need not be the case with the Pippali, which is Kadurasa but Madhura Vipaga. Similarly, there are possibilities, there are options, there are uh, leads that can be explored further in this regard, like whether the whether a lavana spends more time in the madhura paga avastha, in the avastha paga, or a tikta rasa dravya spending more time with the kadupaga avastha of the avastha paga. All these can be explored. I think the modern technology also may be helping. So all these possibilities can be seen further to these concepts of vipaga that what we were discussing. There are many other options. We can find better definitions, better uh, understanding about what is deepanam or what is pajanam based on these concepts. Because how do a dravya interact with Jadharagni? That is going to be very crucial in defining what Deepana is, or what does a Deepana Dravya do. Like modifying the tendency of a stuff, to spend more time in the Madhura Bhaga Avastha. So that may be the real thing what is happening in a Deepana Karma. Similarly, the Amapajanam, where do we focus? That can be more specific. The pajanam of of a dravya, in which level, that is also going to be very interesting point when we start approaching it with this concepts in mind. Anyway, I think we are not going very far away from our core concept. Another important or interesting rather point in this context could be the especially related to the Dvivitha Vipagam is it is purely based on the Bhautika Ghatana, the Bhautika constitution. That is how it is divided into Guru and Lekhu. Actually, that Guru and Lekhu are Vipagas, they are not Gunas. They represent the same terminology, Guru Guna, Guru Vipaga. But Guru Guna and Guru Vipaga are not same, even though they are expressed with the same sapnya. That is very important. Madhura Rasa and Madhura Vipaga are not same, even though they are represented or expressed by the same sapnya. And another point is we have seen that okay, this is something related with the encounter of a dravya with the Agni. That is how we call it as Paga. And that causes Parinama. And to what extent this Parinama happens? That is another important question. To what extent this Parinama occurs? We might have heard the discussion in the darshanas about the parinama that is happening to something when it is exposed to Agni. See a piece of clay, maybe a piece of clay tile, raw, is cooked in fire. So then immediately the brown colored clay is turned into red. Its touch will be different. Its smell will be different. Maybe if we look very sharply, its rasa also may be changing. Definitely, shabda also changes. So, to what extent this change is happening? That is always a question. There are two schools. You may be familiar with them. Two schools of thought. The uh, Vaisheshika school, they propose an idea in this regard called Pilu Paga concept. Whereas Nyaya school of thought, they propose another concept called Pidhara Paga. Pilu Paga and Pidhara Paga. Pilu means Paramanu. So Pilu Paga concept, they argue that the Pagam is happening in the Paramanu level according to the Vaisheshika school of thought. When exposed to Agni, the Paramanus disintegrate and Pagam happens to that level and causes the parinama, then they reintegrate and becomes a new dravya. That is known as the concept of Pilu Paga. Nyaya school proposes another concept called Pidhara Paga. Pidhara means pot. So when a raw clay pot is heated, the changes that happen is in the level of the pot as such, pot itself. There is no parinama happening in the paramanu level. The dravya does not disintegrate at the level of the paramanus and reintegrate again to form the new pot. That is Pidhara Paga concept. So this is very strong. Actually, these two proposals about how does a dravya change during Paga is very strong. They both of them are having their own strength and support from the scholars. Actually, we can think that it is the same difference in ideas could be the background behind the twofold uh, division of Vipaga as Dvividham and Trividham. The same logic. Trividha Vipagam is based on the Pilu Pagavad. That is how that Yadude, the Rasandaram, actually that Rasandaram is Dravyandaram. Whereas Dvividha Vipagam follows the school of Pidhara Bhagavad. This could be the reason or logic behind these different types of conceptualization of the principle of Vipaka. Actually, how the ahara is getting divided into Sara and Kitta, and how the Sara is becoming the dhadus of Sharira, definitely I think we require the Pilu Bhagavad. I don't think that it can be explained by Pidhara Bhagavad. That could be the reason why the Trividha Virya, Trividha Vipaga Vadam became more acceptable among the scholars of the later period. So that is also an interesting point. And coming to the next area, we will find a very interesting, very short piece in the text. That is Rasairasau Tulya Bhalah. Rasairasau Tulya Bhalah means these three vipakas are having similar bhala, similar bhala as rasa, similar bhala as rasa. So what does it mean? It simply means that it is not rasa. It is not rasa, but it is having similar bhala as rasa. That is why they are known by the same names of the rasas. Like as we find in the case of Raktapittam. here Vipagam is having the Tulya Bhalata with Rasa. So Madhura Vipagam is not Madhura Rasam, but it is having similar bhalam yad sadhayadi tad bhalam, similar bhalam as Madhura Rasa. Similarly, Amla Vipagam is having similar bhalam as Amla Rasa. Kadu Vipagam is having similar bhalam as Kadu Rasa. They are not same. I hope the idea is clear. They are having similarity in the outcome. So they are known by the same name, but they are not same. Fine. So Rasai Rasau Tulya Bhalaha. There are many points or questions, but I think with the description, couple of them are already answered. Then what really a Deepana and Pajana Dravya do? There is one question. Then Asavarishta Kalpana doesn't have expectations for digestion. So will it either surpass or go very quickly through these stages? That is true. That is true. There are many Kalpanas or Aushadha Yogas which can bypass this screening by the Agni. I think that was a challenge actually. So from the Samhita period, we find the introduction of Asavarishta or Madhya Kalpana that way. All the Vishas are having this capacity. Then later on, we find slowly the introduction of Rasa Ushadhas. After their Maranam, they can go straight without this sort of a screening by the Agni. And that slowly advanced, and the modern medications, these chemical drugs, whatever we use in the allopathic practice these days, they also do not wait for the Jadharagni Pakam. So they all bypass the stage of that Jadharagni Pakam. Then what is really Deepana and Pachana Dravyas do? That also can be looked in this perspective, but even otherwise, Deepana Dravyas are working on the Agni, whereas Pajana Dravyas are those Dravyas which modify the status of the stuff which is to be acted upon by Agni. So one is working on Agni and the other is working on the stuff which is supposed to be acted upon by Agni. That is the difference between Deepana and Pachana. Then what does it mean by Guru Vipaga? Guru Vipaga is simple. Guru Vipaga means it is something related with the Kala. Kala which is required or taken for getting processed by the Agni. It is based on the Bhuta constitution. Prithvi, Jala, Pradhana Dravyas are coming under Guru. The remaining three are coming under Lekhu. So Guru Vipaga shows that it takes longer time to get processed by the Agni. Lekhu Vipaga means it takes shorter time to get processed by the Agni. But that is not enough. Actually, the understanding should not be concluded at that point. A Guru Vipaga Dravya will take longer time to get processed by Agni, and even at the end of that change, it remains to be Guru in Guna. That is the peculiarity. Same is the case with Lekhu also. Then Vipaga has Tulya Bhala. Then what it makes different to Rasa? No, no. Tulya Bhala means uh, the purpose. Yet sadhayati tad bhala. You have to travel 50 kilometers by road. You may go by a car. You may go by a bike. Both are giving you tulya bhala, but they are not same. That is the difference. Tulya bhala and the tulyata. The car and bike were giving tulya bhala, but car and bike are not tulya. I hope that idea is clear. Extent of karma of rasa and vipaka. Yeah, that is again a point of debate. Actually, these were the points that we have to cover, but I think we will make another few more episodes for a completing vibhaga. That is why I'm um, bringing them into a short explanation. Extent of karma of rasa and vipaka. This is always a debate, but I think that need not be very complex, because ultimately these terminologies are explaining the Bhuta constitution of a Dravya, number one, the compactness of or consistency of the binding between these Bhutas in a Dravya, how easily they are disintegrated while encountering the Agni, and how much is retained at the end of that Paka. Actually, all these principles, and with that end of the Paga, Nishtha, how does it influence the dosha, dushya, and mala? This is what we are trying to explain with all these principles. So, when we take individual principles separately, they may look like contradicting with other principles. But you cannot take any of these principles separately in your practice. That is the interesting part. So at that point, you will have to keep all these ideas about that particular dravya in your mind and use the dravya as a whole. You cannot use the Madhura Rasa alone, keeping the Guru Guna or Ushna Virya or Sida Virya or Madhura Vipaga away. But you should have an idea. Say, if I'm taking this as Madhura Rasa Dravya, this Madhura Rasa Dravya is Shida Virya, whereas there is another Madhura Rasa Dravya which is Ushna Virya. And this Madhura Rasa Shida Virya Dravya is Guru, whereas that Madhura Rasa Ushna Virya Dravya is also Guru. There may be a third Dravya which is Madhura Rasa Ushna Virya and Laghu. So, on the ultimate selection of this Dravya, you are getting a complete picture. You cannot exclude any of these individual principles. Then Guru Vipaga and Pidharapaga. Guru Vipaga and Pidharapaga means the Dravya is not getting changed completely or disintegrated to the Paramanu level, but it is changing as a whole. That is what is Pidharapaga is about. So in Guru Vipaga and Raghu Vipaga, they don't propose about the Udaya of a new Dravya at the end of this Jadaragni Paga. They talk about just how this Dravya encounters the Agni and how much effort it requires to get processed by the Agni. Only that much is discussed. So it is all about the peripheral or the as a whole paga. It is not discussing about the disintegration of the dravya into paramanus. That is how the Guru Vipaga and Pidharapaga, maybe this is a proposal. I do not have a pramana to give. This is the pramana from which I am quoting. This is my pramana, my idea, my proposal. Similarly, the other one, that means the Pilupaga, suggests that okay, the dravya is getting disintegrated in the paramanu level. And after the paga, when you see the dravya, it is a new dravya after the reintegration of that paramanus again in no time to make the manifestation of the new dravya. So that is how the dravya is becoming yadudedi rasandaram. So there is a proposal of a new dravya in it. That can be explained only with if you accept this Pilu Paga Vada. Then I think this is becoming a Q&A session. Fine. Sir, when Kabha Vruddhi happens in Madhura Avasthapaga, is it qualitative or these are quantitative? Both, both can happen. You will be feeling the qualitative Vruddhi as well as quantitative Vruddhi as well. That is why, see, there is quantity that qualitative vriddhi is obvious. Quantitative vriddhi is also there. That, and actually, ultimately, these two things are not very different. Ultimately, when you go to the crux, the core of the idea, you will understand they are one and same, because qualitative means guna param. If there is guna param, guna is not a swatantra entity. Guna always resides with dravya, isn't it? So when you say that a guna adhishtita vriddhi, obviously there should be a background of dravya adhishtita vriddhi, which could be quantitative. That is why that sadyo bhuktasya sanjade jware same visheshatah vamanam. That sadyo bhuktasya sanjade, there is a very obvious increase in qualitative and quantitative status of kapha, and that is the right time for the vamana in that case. So then, I mean, is there any input to kleda inside body? Uh, Ashwin, can you unmute and ask that question, because it is the continuity is broken.
Yeah, sir. I mean, in the Avastapaka, before the Nishtapaka is attained, in the Avastapaka stage itself, whether there will be a qualitative input to the kleda inside the system, I wanted to ask.
Yes, yes, yes. There will be a qualitative and a quantitative shift in the status of the kleda in the body. But most of these things are experiential, isn't it? See, I think the best option is to listen to a patient who is coming with a problem with the agni or a problem with the grahani, and how does he feel through the stages of his bhajana prakriya. He may be explaining it in a very lucid manner, that changes that is happening in the kleda. If you go through the description of the same vikaras in the nidana like the grahani chikilsitam or the grahani nidanam, then also you can make out that there is a change which is happening in the kleda level as well. Actually, any change in the koshta will immediately reflect in the status of the kleda all over the body. But there may be a grading, as it is explained in the case of the Vishamajwara, that uh, Sukshma Darasyeshu, that Srotas, when they go away from the Amashaya, the Rasavaha Srotas, that their Asyam is becoming finer and finer. So the presentation that is happening in the periphery, which is far away from the costa, may not be perceived very easily. whereas the same thing near the core, the costum, may be perceived very quickly. Only that is the difference, right? So I think we will conclude, because the next I think we have to start a new sloga. Tatra dravyam shubhashubham kinjid rasena kurude karma pagena chaparam gunandarena vidyena prabhavena iva kinchana. I can just read it this time. We may not be able to explain it. So I read it once again. Tatra dravyam shubhashubham kinjid rasena kurude karma pagena cha aparam gunandarena viryena prabhavena eva kinjana. We will see the details in our next session. Thank you very much. I think after a long time we looked into some chats as well this time. Happy. Fine. Shubharatri.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. As you told, we will continue in our next session. Thank you to all. Shubharatri.